Good evening, friends. Hi, this is Sagar Jaivan, and we are all members of Income Tax Appeal Group, and we are meeting every fortnight, Thursday night at around 9:30. And those who are joining for the first time, let me quickly repeat what is the procedure. Here, one of the members who prepares on a particular subject and comes forward to give kind of a leader. She takes a kind of a leader's role. I won't call it as a lecture for the simple reason that this is not a lecture, but certain points are taken out, and then while they are discussed and up to particular point they are discussed, then he may stop and ask, whether anybody wants to add something, ask something, interpret something differently, because we do have lots of stalwarts in this group, and I request all of them to participate, whether you are prepared, not prepared, but you can always have some kind of an interpretation on the spot. If you realize or you understand some point on the spot, please just raise your hand and you can unmute yourself and you can start speaking after speaker gives you some opportunity. This is also unique in the sense that we give more importance to the subject. So we don't want to say that boss, we have got 1.5 hours, so 1.5 hours में इतना सब 4 sections लेना है, complete करो, ऐसा हमारा कभी नहीं होता है. हम लोग बोलते हैं कि जितना लेना है आप ले लो. If it is not getting over in this 1.5 hours from, let us say, 9:30 to 11, and maybe extended time of about another 10 minutes, we'll take it at the part 2. If it is not getting over in part 2, it will get over in part 3. So last time we had C. Akshay Kinkre, who discussed transfer pricing, and all of those who could not attend, this will always be available on YouTube on later date. The last episode, or that is the second part of transfer pricing, has yet to be uploaded somehow. I did not find a time, but I'll be doing it in a couple of days' time once I get little time. So otherwise, all the previous episodes of our discussions are already on the YouTube, and about 9 meetings, and today I think it's our 10th meeting, if I'm not mistaken. So today's topic is also very interesting, especially with some additions which have been made in section 6 related to the person becoming an individual becoming a resident by virtue of the fact that he is not a taxpayer in any other country, and there is something of 120 days included in that. So it is actually slightly complex to understand, and also there are certain basic concepts related to residential status and scope of income, which I'm sure that Deepak Tikekar will be taking maybe I would say stormy and cloudy climate. And at the end of the lectures, whatever we have discussed, at least everybody would be clear about the concept, as well as some of the case laws which are prominent in nature, which are landmark kind of judgments. So probably those can also be discussed. And Deepak has got another special style, that he sometimes comes out with a point which will not find anywhere in the textbooks, in the act, in the YouTubes, anywhere you'll not find, and he'll come out with something and which will make you think. Let's see whether he comes out with some kind of points similar to what I'm. I request again all of you to keep yourself on mute. But it may be a good idea to have the self-discipline. With this discussion, I would hand over our very own Deepak Tikekar. He had already been with us in the past, and he had discussed another important topic, and now with our request, he has once again agreed. Just becoming not that easy. One has to study, spend some time, and he has done it for all of us. So first of all, thank Deepak ji, and then request him to start with his
Sir, my PowerPoint presentation, can you show?
Yes, I will show. But before that, and what I'll do is that, if I find that there are many people who are keeping themselves on unmute mode and it's a lot of noise, then I will mute all, and then you will have to actually unmute yourself, so that it will be easier for me rather than muting everybody. So if you find sometimes muted, you can do that.
Okay.
Otherwise, individually, if 1 or 2 persons are there, I will mute them myself. So now I will start sharing the screen, and then we will go to, yes. So Deepak ji, you can see the screen very much.
Yes.
So you can start with your presentation. You take your own time. There is no hurry.
Yeah.
And after a certain point of time, you can always wait and allow others to ask questions, deliberate, because we would definitely like to add some value today.
Sure. Then we can update this presentation with all the inputs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sagar, at the outset, I sincerely thank you for giving me this opportunity. It is really interesting that I had an opportunity to lead first presentation, and this is the 10th presentation. So I have opportunity of leading first and 10th presentation. I sincerely thank you for that. Before I start going ahead with my presentation, I would like to share a story. See, we all are seniors, and I really we have all experience. But the younger ones, the younger members, they are very innovative. They think in a different way. So I am reminded of one story.
येते तुम्हाला येते.
ऐकू येत आहे ना सगळ्यांना? Am I
हो,
audible?
ऐकू येत आहे. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So there was one story. There was one company manufacturing toothpastes. Its sales got stagnated. So they were having some marketing strategy, how to increase sales. So they visited various educational institutions and colleges. So they asked for the suggestions. So at one place they gave, somebody said that instead of certain, say 50 grams, you fill up 45 grams. Somebody said you put bubbles. So these are all unethical practices. So they went to one brilliant school. So the one student there was really innovative. He said, what you should do is you increase the diameter of the mouth from where the toothpaste comes out. So everybody is used to take out toothpaste of a specific length. So moment the diameter of the toothpaste is increased, the more toothpaste will come out, and the same toothpaste will last for a shorter time. They did that, and I was told their sales increased by 10%. So this is kind of offbeat thinking, and we should appreciate younger generation giving different types of suggestions. Today I'll be speaking on taxability of income in India and TDS thereon. This is the broad topic. I propose to cover section 5, section 6, section 9, and section 195, along with some part of double tax avoidance agreement, because that itself is a used topic by itself. Today I propose to cover sections 5 and section 6, and there are about 18 slides. So can we go to slide number 1, please? Slide number 2, please. So taxability of income in India depends on 4 factors. One is the residential status of the recipient of the income. 2, whether the income is received in India or deemed to be received in India. Number 3, accrual of income or arisal of income in India. This is covered in section 9. Provisions of double tax avoidance agreements. There are other factors also which influence the taxability of an income in India, but that itself is a separate topic by itself. And I think Sagar should take up those kind of discussions subsequently, like capital receipt versus revenue receipts. diversion by overriding title, principle of mutuality, exemptions. Probably each of this will have a separate, can have a separate presentation on its own. Anybody, anything to say on this? Can we go to slide number 3 then? So further slides will be as per the elaborations of these 4 aspects. Now, generally, all of us are aware. I will take you through column wise as well as row wise. So if you are a resident, then your income received in India is taxable in India. Income accruing or arising in India is taxable in India, and income accruing or arising outside India is also taxable. If you are a not ordinary resident, then your income in India, which is received in India, is taxable. Income which is accruing or arising in India is taxable. Income accruing outside India is taxable only if it is derived from business controlled in India or a profession set up in India. In case of a non-resident, the income in India, income accruing or arising in India, as well as income received in India is taxable, and income accruing outside India is not taxable. Or in other words, income received in India, income received in India is taxable for resident for all. Income received in India and income accruing in India is taxable in case of all the categories of SSCs. Income accruing or arising outside India is taxable in case of a resident. It is not taxable in case of non-residents. And in case of not ordinarily resident, it is taxable only if it is derived from business control from India or profession set up in India. I think these all of us know, but I'm just taking it. Now, section 6 talks about residential status of the recipient of the income. And there are different criteria for individual, then FQF, firm, association of persons and other persons, there is separate criteria. And for company, there is separate criteria. And in these slides, we will go into detail into the place of effective management rules of the company. So first is in case of individuals. So in case of an individual, he is deemed to be resident in India if any of the two, one or two, you satisfy. So one is if you are in India for 182 days or more, you are deemed to be resident in India. Number 2, if you are in India for 60 days or more in that previous year, and in preceding 4 years, you are in India for 365 days or more, then you are deemed to be resident in India. Now, in this second condition, that is for 60 days, becomes 182 days for only limited purpose. So we should be very clear about it. 1, it is available only to a citizen of India who is leaving India for employment outside India. So it is applicable only to Indian citizens and who go outside India for employment outside India. So we will, in subsequent slides, we will understand the meaning and the implications of leaving India for employment outside India. Those who are coming back, those who are abroad, and those, next slide only. Those who are citizens of India, or those who are citizens of other country, but those who are persons of Indian origin, if they come on visit to India, then the period of 60 days is 182 days. So this was the law up to assessment year 2021. So in the second B part, it is applicable only to citizen of India, or if you are a citizen of another country, but you are a person of Indian origin, that is, and you are on visit to India. mind you, you are on visit to India and no other condition and no other circumstances. As from assessment year 21-22, in case of B, that is citizens of India or persons of Indian origin coming on visit to India, the period of 182 days has been reduced to 120 days in case of those citizens whose total income other than from the foreign source is rupees 15 lakhs, is more than 15 lakhs. So this is the major amendment. So if you are a citizen of India and you are coming back, returning back, and if your Indian income exceeds 15 lakhs, then the period of stay for the qualifying as instead of 182 days, it is 120 days. However, if your income is below 15 lakhs, then the period of stay remains 182 days. I hope I'm clear. Section 6A has been introduced with effect from assessment year 21-22, in which it says, now this is applicable only to citizens of India. This is not applicable to foreign citizens. So those citizens of India whose income, total income other than from the foreign source is more than 15 lakhs, and if such persons are not liable to tax in another country because of the reason of domicile, residence or similar criteria, they shall be deemed to be resident of India. They shall be deemed to be resident. This is applicable from assessment year 21-22. When this amendment was introduced by the finance bill, there was hue and cry. Everybody thought that the employees who are working in Gulf, especially where there are no tax laws, those will become taxable because of this section. Then the finance minister clarified by way of a press release dated 2nd February 2020, in which finance minister clarified that the salary of the employees in the Gulf will not be taxed in India. Then there was another statement made that income abroad will not be taxed unless it is derived from business, Indian business. So if you are a businessman in India and you are traveling abroad, so for example, if a person who's a globetrotter, so if he's 30 days in country 1, 30 days in country 2, and he becomes not non-resident in any of the country, neither in India or nowhere, then his income he will be deemed to be resident in India and his income will be taxed in India. But those who are regular employees of any country outside India, those will not be taxed. In case of HUF, firm, association of persons and other persons, it shall be deemed to be resident of India except where the control and management of its affairs is situated wholly outside India. So in case of HUF, firm and AOP, even if a slightest control is exercised from India, the firm will be deemed to be resident in India and its income abroad will be taxed. In case of a company, if it is an Indian company, then it will be deemed to be resident in India and its income all over the world will be taxable. Up to assessment year 2016-17, the condition was that during that year, the control and the management of its affairs situated wholly in India. So this condition is simply opposite of in case of a firm. So in case of a company, even if you prove that slightest of the control is exercised from outside India, the company would become non-resident. So many consultants used to advise that if you want to set up any entity outside India, it is advisable to set up a company, because even if you establish that slightest control is exercised from outside India, it will not be taxable in India. However, with effect from assessment year 2017-18, the government has brought in a concept called place of effective management, or we will call it as POEM. So if the place of effective management of any company is in India, for that year, then the income outside India would be taxed. So for example, if you float a company in Dubai, and if as per place of effective management rules, its place of effective management is in India, then its income will be that company will be taxable in India. And in subsequent slides, we'll go into the details of place of effective management rules. Anybody, any clarification, anything? Shall I go?
Deepak, one small point. In regard to subclause B, uh, is it applicable only when you come to India on a visit?
Yes.
All right. So therefore,
Hmm.
a returning Indian, a person who was a resident outside India and returns to India for good, that substitution does not apply.
That is 60 days. So that will come in the subsequent my slides. That is coming in my subsequent slides in details.
Okay.
It is interesting. So that's why I made it very clear that it is coming on visit to India. The wording is visit to India.
So the latter part of income also applies only to a person coming on a visit and not otherwise.
Yes.
Okay, Deepak, just one more thing, if I can interrupt. See, in part A, you have mentioned employment. That is, he goes abroad for the purpose of employment. So, since employment is not defined under the Income Tax
I will
Act,
come to that.
So I just want you to draw attention that it could be for the a profit could be earned in many ways. So that would also be
Yes,
gainful employment.
I have covered that point.
You have covered that point.
I have covered that point in detail. In detail, I have covered. In subsequent slides, it will come.
Just one more thing.
Yes.
See, a poem generally cannot be read in a standalone manner. I mean, of course, you give the brief introduction of poem, but probably next time we will have to, if it is really to be covered, then we will have to cover GAAR, MLI as well as BEPA. That is base erosion and profit shifting, multilateral instruments, and general anti-avoidance rules. Because you know what happens is, like, I just want to point that out. म्हणजे एक मेडिसिन घेतलं तर तुम्हाला एक असा सर्टन इफेक्ट येतो, पण ते 2-4 मेडिसिन्सचं मिक्स झालं ना, मग अगदी वाताहत लागते. तसं खरोखरी यू शुड रीड एन आर्टिकल बाय मिस्टर दातार, that how it becomes a potent or a deadly combination, because all of these operate at the same time.
True. But at
probably
least see, many of us
look at that interplay also.
Yes. But
first we need to understand what poem is. Absolutely.
Let us understand POEM
first.
Yes. Then we go to. But I have not gone into details of GAAR and the other.
No problem. We can do that next time or in the third time. No problem. Okay.
Yes.
Sir, I would like to add or maybe try to point out if I am right. Then because of these two new sections or provisions where we are talking about 120 days, one is 120 days and another is a stateless person, because of which we are becoming resident. So here they have very clearly mentioned that he is not going to become resident, but he will be actually not ordinary resident always. He cannot become a normal resident. He will become a resident, but not ordinary resident. And if that be the case, then the income that they are talking about, which will be taxed, is only if which is the income, controlled from India only. So whether that was the intention or it has happened inadvertently or something, or if it was the intention that they wanted to tax only that income which is controlled from India and from these people where the Indian income is more than 15 lakhs. So you might have covered this, but I thought that this is an important point.
In not ordinarily resident definition, those two amendments, those are covered there. But actually, yes, you are right. The main intention was not to tax salary income abroad. The intention was all over world, and those who are neither they are resident of none of the countries, and they earn income everywhere, then nobody pays tax. So therefore, to cover this eventuality, they have made these amendments.
Can I just add one small thing? Before we warm up into the technical discussions, then I won't interrupt. Actually, if you look at the history
You are
of
welcome
taxation,
anytime to
no,
contribute.
not like that. If you look at the history of taxation of non-residents, it has always been an ambitious attempt on the part of Indian government to try and tax transactions outside India, even beyond the jurisdiction, all the time.
Yeah, we are the meeting.
साठे sir will echo me when I say की लंडन मध्ये केस कापले तर त्या न्हाव्याचे सुद्धा इन्कम इथे इंडियात टॅक्सेबल होईल. That was the attempt originally, and provisions were made like that. Then when international cooperation made them realize that, and in fact now it's going into a completely different way. We have now common minimum taxation. I think
I
Sate sir,
have a
तुम्ही
point
करू
is that
शकाल. Yes,
तो
yes.
नाव्ही जर का इंडियन असेल ना तर त्यांनी इकडे शिकून आमचे केस कापून शिकलेला असेल तर त्यांनी टॅक्स भरलाच पाहिजे इथे, कारण आमची भादरून तिकडे जाऊन भादरून पाऊण मिळवतो, त्यामुळे इथे इथे टॅक्स भरायला पाहिजे.
No, but I appreciate what Kaneriji is saying. It's what you call extraterritorial jurisdiction. And there is a Bombay High Court remark on this. For example, if there is a managing director of a company who visits abroad, if he falls sick, and if he visits any pathological lab, and if he conducts some pathological test and the company pays for those tests, whether the income of that pathological lab will be deemed to accrue or arise in India under Section 9. So I think Bombay High Court interpreted that Section 9 in a different way. So these are all interesting issues.
Okay, you go ahead, I think.
Deepak, in such cases, make available will apply. Actually.
No. But there are certain countries. No, for example, you are talking about countries where there is make available clause. But there are certain countries where fees for technical services doesn't make available clause. Yeah. Yeah. In that event, that if they say that the government is capable of saying that doctor's fees were utilized by this company in business in India because he was an employee of Indian company and he visited abroad, and ultimately it helped the business of the Indian company. Yeah. Shall we go to slide?
Yes.
Next slide. But very interesting discussion. Now, all your points will be covered here. And this is a first decision of authority for advance ruling. Here, there was an individual who took up employment in USA and he was in India for 123 days in all. So therefore, he was deemed to be non-resident and therefore his salary was not considered as taxable in India. A very straightforward case. Mind you, the word used here is residence and not domicile. So there is a difference between two. A domicile generally means when a person wants to make his permanent home there and he wants to settle down there. Whereas residence means he wants to stay there for a considerable time. So here in the act, the word used is residence and not domicile. There is a decision of authority for advance ruling in 223 ITR 462. It says that day of entry or day of departure is also to be counted. So you should do your planning. So if your flight is at say 1 o'clock in the night, you should get that immigration stamp before 11. So you can save one more day. Similarly, if you are returning back and if your flight comes at 11 in the night, you wait there for one day and go to that earlier slide only. Go to that earlier slide only. Yeah, and you should check in only after 12. So therefore, by this decision, the next one, the next one. So this day of entry and departure is to be counted. So while coming back, if you land at 11, you should go in for immigration after 12. So you can save one day. Now this period of 182 days stay is not necessarily continuous. So even if you come at different points of time and that you have to read the total stay, count the total stay whole year. There is a decision of Delhi High Court which says that period of involuntary stay on account of impounding of passport should not be counted. So during the period the passport was impounded for whatever reasons, he had to stay not voluntarily. Therefore, the Delhi High Court has said that for the purpose of section 61A, when the passport is impounded, the period of stay during that impounding should not be counted for calculating number of days. Now, last year, that is financial year 1920 or assessment year 2021 was a year of pandemic. So the government came out with a circular number 11 dated 8th May 2020. Now that circular says that if anybody who is in India on visit to India and is not able to leave India before 31st March 2020, then his period of stay from 22nd March 2020 to 31st March 2020, or if he left earlier, say on 28th or 29th, then till his date of departure by that evacuation flight, that period of stay should not be counted. Similarly, if somebody came to India on say 1st of March 2020, and if he had to be evacuated, quarantined, and then the period of stay from the 1st of April or date of quarantine till his date of departure by evacuation flight or till 31/3/2020 is to be excluded. Very unfortunately for financial year 2021, the government has not come out with any circular extending these kind of concession. However, they have just said there is a general circular which says that you, if you become resident because of this and because of the not ordinarily resident criteria and all other like double tax avoidance agreement, still you may be outside the taxable ambit. But they have not given any concession from 1st of April 2020. Now the wording used here is for employment outside India includes any visit for taking business outside India. This is clarified in 241 CTR 485. Here they have said, the High Court, Kerala High Court has said that employment excludes visits like tourists, medical treatment or education. So if a student goes to USA on say 15th of August for his September curriculum, then his period of stay is not increased to 182 days. This is the common mistakes we all of us make. So if the student is going abroad for education, then period of stay is 60 days only. Similarly, if somebody goes as a tourist, then the period of stay in India is 60 days only, not 182 days. So for employment outside India includes business outside India, undertaking business outside India, but it does not include visits as tourists for medical treatment or for education.
Yeah, there is one exception. I just wanted to clarify about the
Sure.
student. See, it is a combination of three things. First thing is RBI has come out with a circular stating that when a student goes abroad for STEM student, that is science, technology, engineering, and medicine. So this is applicable only to STEM students. What happens is they are permitted to take up employment. I'm talking about the US, but other countries have a similar arrangement. They are permitted to take up employment abroad after completion of their curriculum on continuation of their student visa for a period of 3 years.
That's called OPT.
Till that time,
That is called OPT.
yes, correct.
Yeah.
So therefore, what happens is that they are on a valid working visa. That is what has been interpreted or considered, because this is not concerned with the Income Tax Act. It is concerned with the FEMA.
Yeah.
So under FEMA, students during their studentships are considered as
Resident in India.
resident in India. But after that, although they are still on a student visa, they are considered as non-residents under FEMA because they have taken up an employment which is permitted by that category of visa. So
Correct.
that is, so therefore accordingly, although no such case have come across, but their income would also, I mean, they would also be considered as having taken up employment overseas if the question of applicability of the Income Tax Act arises. So the visa should not have an effect on them.
So we had a discussion with, I think Milind Desai, and we had a discussion with some FEMA consultant, and we were told that till you are a student, you can continue with your ordinary savings account here. Moment you convert your student visa into employment visa, like F1 into H1 visa in US, you are supposed to convert your savings account into NRO account. Yeah, and in your case, what you are mentioning is, yes, if I go in the month of say September, and if I take up employment, then we'll have to check in the month of say January, then whether his income from January to March will become taxable. Yes, then we'll have to check whether we can take it as a scholarship granted to meet
No,
cost
this
of
I'll tell you the reason, because
Hmm.
what happens is that they get a social security number, and they get a employee certificate from the university, and a tax return is filed for them.
No, they file tax return even if there is no employee
No, but the
relationship.
social
And
security
even if
number
they get
comes.
assistantship, even if they get, yeah, they get immediate.
No, this is
social
only
security.
where, let me explain. This is only where it is a state university. This happens that they become employees of the government, even
Okay.
if they are students. So
Okay.
therefore, that I think would be a different categorization.
That is
That's
mainly
the
in California state. There are many
Ah,
California state has a state universities,
Hmm.
whereas the other states there are many private universities. So they, for example, my sons went there and they got assistantship. So that assistantship many times it is either research assistantship or teaching assistantship. It is not strictly speaking scholarship, but still they have to pay tax on that there.
yes, true.
Yeah.
They have to pay tax
Yeah.
on that.
Okay.
But in
Okay.
India,
Yeah.
probably you can argue out a case that even though it is called as a research assistantship, it is a scholarship granted to meet cost of education, because that is just sufficient to take care of their educational expenses,
Cost
or
of
tuition waiver,
True.
part tuition waiver,
Yes.
and part of the lodging and boarding expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True.
but in
True.
any case, under Income Tax Act, he will be a non-resident NRI in any case, right?
No. See, if he goes in the month of August and his curriculum starts in September, then he
Okay,
will be
okay.
resident in that.
Yeah,
For the
yeah, yeah.
first year, there could be a
First
problem.
year there could be a problem. No, but then if we apply 60 days rule, then what happens?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if he
Ah,
goes in
so
August,
precisely.
then he will
Exactly.
be treated as a resident.
Yeah.
And if he gets assistantships, a research assistantship from October to March,
And that will be a question, of course. That
will be a question. Then we'll have to argue that it is a scholarship granted to meet cost of education. In any case, even if it is taxed here, you will get credit for taxes paid in USA.
True.
In
Shall we
fact,
go to
Deepak,
Yes.
because 61C is 61B is couched in the words visit to India
Yes.
and does not apply to a returning Indian, it
Yes.
could create significant hardship.
Yes.
I'll just illustrate a simple case
Yes.
like this, that I leave India on 1st of January. So I've been in that year, I've been here for more than 182 days. So the 3 months income that I earn outside India will be taxable in India because I'm a resident. Then I come back to India, suppose again on 31st of December, right? Now what happens then? I come back to India on 31st of December, I will be in India for more than 60 days. So because 61B does not apply to me because I've come back for good, not on visit to India. So therefore, in a scenario like this,
I'll come in slide. It's coming in subsequent slide. It is coming in.
So therefore, these are difficulties of peculiar cases.
Yes. This is coming in subsequent slide. It is coming in subsequent slide.
Acha, Deepak sir, have you discussed in detail in subsequent slide what is the exact meaning
go
of
to
visits?
Yes,
Visits?
please go to second. Please go to the next slide. Now, the first case is VK Ratty and Company 299 ITR 295. So therefore, when an SSC employed in a foreign country comes to India on termination of his employment, then his case doesn't fall under that explanation. And if his period of stay is India in say 90 days, so if he comes in the month of December and he on the termination of his employment, his income, his period of stay will be counted as 60 days. And if it is say more than 60 days, then he will be deemed to be resident. Then you'll have to go check whether he's a not ordinary resident, whether he was a non-resident for 9 years or not. So if he comes back after say period of 5 years, and if he comes back in December, then his income abroad will become taxable. In such an event, you should advise him that he should return somewhere in the first week of February and reduce his period of stay from less than 60 days. Now, Anil, this is second case, Manoj Kumar Reddy Nare. This case covers your contingency. Here, this employee was sent on deputation from April till January 2005. So, his period of stay from that year, if you count after he came back, so probably he came on 31st January 2005. And if you calculate 28 days of February and 31st day of March, it was 59 days. So normally he would not have been non-resident. He would have been non-resident because it is less than 60 days. But if you add these 2 days from 18th August to 6th September 2004, his period of stay in India, then he would become resident. Now this High Court, Karnataka High Court has held that this period of stay during 18th August to 6th September, since he was on visit to India during those number of days, that period of stay should be excluded. And therefore, then he will be treated as a non-resident.
But
I
then during that period he was on visit to India, na? The question is that suppose one goes outside India and comes to India,
Yes.
where actually what happens is then in the first year I was here for more than 182 days. So therefore that 3 months income gets taxable. And in the second year, suppose I come back for the first time again in January, then effectively what happens is I'm more than 60 days. Even in that year, the income
Yes,
gets
you will
taxable.
be resident. You will be resident.
So effectively, though I worked outside India for 12 months, that entire 12 months income becomes taxable.
So you should plan your arrival and departure in a proper way. So instead of he coming on 31st January, you should have come on say 2nd of February.
I agree. It's not always
That is
very
correct. That is
And
covered in the
similarly,
first case.
and
which
when
you have given.
he wants to leave India, he should leave by probably 30th of September or maybe 1st of October, something like that, to ensure that he's not in India for 182 days.
And also every time that you check residency, people should be advised to look at FEMA also,
Yes.
particularly because
Yes.
these are two different laws with two different implications. So
Correct. Now, employment outside India does not mean you should be fresh employment. Even if you are an employee of say Infosys and you are sent on deputation to UK, still it is fine. So employment does not necessarily means fresh employment. It can be even on deputation. Merely undertaking tours abroad in connection with employment cannot attract application of 61A. So for example, if you are in a marketing department and you visit abroad continuously, then you cannot call it as a employment outside India. He is employee here only and he is undertaking tours in connection with his employment in India. Therefore, this will not give you the 182 days limit. So one has to be very careful with this. So when somebody going abroad, you'll have to check what is the visa, whether it is a tourist visa or a business visa or an employment visa, and then take a call. This last case is very interesting. This is the practical case. There was one chartered accountant who approached me with this case. There was one elderly gentleman. He was about 78 years old. He served in USA for about 40 years. He got all his retirement dues and he got a pension there only in USA. He had house both in India, in USA, at both places. His son and daughters and all his family members were in USA. If you looked at his total investment, 95% of the investment was in USA, including Social Security, and income in India was nominal. But last few years, he has been overstaying in India for more than 182 days. Now what happened is, under Article 4 of India-US Double Tax Avoidance Agreement, there are tiebreaker rules. So first tiebreaker rule is, general rule is that houses at both places. So since he had houses in both places, there was a tiebreaker. Then because of the subsequent criteria, like his son and daughter are there, his maximum investment is there, his 401k or what that social security and pension is there. Therefore, under India USA double tax treaty, he is deemed to be resident of USA, even though he has stayed for more than 182 days in India. And therefore, he will be deemed to be no, and the Article 4 of US DTA will prevail over 61C. And therefore, this tribunal has held that 61C assumes no importance because Article 4 of India USA DTA will prevail over the Income Tax Act, and therefore his income abroad will not be taxable. The CA in Mumbai was confused. That CA was telling me that if I write in the return my period of stay of 180, say 190 days in the current year and more than 365 days in the last 4 years, the department will say that you are a resident by the normal return when you upload the return. So that CA said that I will write here as a resident because I don't want any problems, and I will show that income earned outside India as exempt income. I was telling her, don't do that. That will mean, first of all, that you are committing yourself that you are a resident. Then subsequently in the appeal, when you have to take a stand that you are a non-resident, that's going to create problem. The second problem I foresee is that you are saying that this income is exempt. If you see under any section of section 10, this is not income exempt. This income is not taxable at all because of double tax treaty. This income does not fall under any of the sections of section 10, provisions of section 10. So I was strongly recommending that chartered accountant that you should show as a non-resident. If there is any query from centralized processing center, you answer those query, and we give decision in this case that 177 ITD 17 Bangalore Tribunal. Any views on this? Because the last case I found very interesting.
Yeah.
Initially, I was under the impression that double tax avoidance agreement, whether it will affect the residential status. See, taxing income at both the places or giving credit is avoidance of double tax, taxation of income twice. But
yeah.
under the treaty, moment you say that you are a resident of another country, like say USA in this case, then you cannot be treated as a resident. I was under the impression that this treaty initially says that where you will get credit. So source country would be India, the residential country would be USA, and that assessee will get credit for tax paid in India in USA, not vice versa.
Deepak, only one small point. We are all universally agreed that section 61B, the latter part of the amendment applies only to a person of Indian origin or a citizen of India coming to India on a visit. That is universally agreed interpretation. Because we had discussed this earlier at one point of time. There is another view on this also.
Yeah,
if you look at 61B,
1 minute, I'm opening.
It starts off with the words being a citizen of India or a person of Indian origin within the meaning of explanation, who being outside India comes on a visit to India. Now look at the addition. And in case of the citizen or person of Indian origin having total income. Now the question is the latter part of the addition applicable only to a person who comes on a visit, or it's applicable de-horse the person being on a visit? That is something which you really need to test, because the other view is also equally possible.
But they are saying for the purpose of this clause, no?
No. So I'm saying that in case of a citizen of India or person of Indian whatever region, the words for the 60 days occurring therein has been substituted by. So does it apply only to visit, or it will apply universally is the question.
I feel it will apply only to visit.
Vishnu, any other view?
What you say seems to be more logical. If you read it once more, I'll just open 61B.
Open 61B. Look at 61B.
I'll just open it.
Shall I read it for everybody? For the benefit?
Yeah, if you can show it, it's better.
No, I don't.
Showing is
No,
difficult.
Sagar, can you show 6.1b?
Now I will read it. No, so I'll
Okay,
let
okay.
me- let us read. Or you want to read? You read, na?
No, you're okay. You can read it, sir. No problem.
So 6.1b talks about being citizen of India or a person of Indian origin within the meaning of explanation to clause E of section 115C, who being outside India comes on a visit in any previous year, the provisions of subclause C shall apply in relation to that year as if for the word 60 days occurring therein, the words 182 days had been substituted. And now it is come from with effect from 1st April 2021. And in case of such person,
No.
in case of such person having total income, such person having total income other than income from foreign sources exceeding rupees 15 lakhs during the previous year.
No. So, and in case of the citizen or person of Indian origin, other than the income from foreign sources exceeding, that's what they are saying, na?
No. The wording is for such person. So such person means they will say citizen of India and persons of Indian origin. Such person
See.
wording is used. And in case of such person,
No, but no, it is not and. See, it is like this. Huh?
and
Now,
in
if
case
you
of
see, no,
such
one minute.
person-
See, what it says is being a citizen of India
Hmm.
or a person of Indian origin. So
Hmm.
it is applicable to, if a person is a citizen of India, then it applies. Or if a person is a person of Indian origin, then also it applies. That is, it applies to PIO.
Correct.
So probably those who hold a PIO card or those who hold an Indian passport, it only applies to
At
them.
any point of time, he or
Within the meaning of so and so,
grandparents
who being
had-
outside India
Hmm.
comes on a visit to India in any previous year, the provisions of subclause C shall apply in relation to that year, as if for the word 60 days occurring therein, the words 182 days had been
Substituted.
substituted, and in
And-
case of such person having total income, so such person would refer to the person who is being referred all along, that is the returning person. Having total income other than the income from foreign sources exceeding 15 lakh rupees during the previous year. For the words 60 days occurring therein, the words 120 days had been substituted. So, I mean, logically, that such person would mean the
In my
person who is
opinion,
a
it-
citizen of India or a PIO.
correct. That's what I interpret.
Can't apply to a non-citizen.
No. I'm not on that.
Hmm.
And so the point is that 100 words, and in the case of such person having total income
So such
from foreign
person
source,
would
such
mean
means citizen of India
Citizen or PIO.
or a PIO.
or PIO who is coming on a visit. That's important.
Yes.
Who being outside, no,
Yes.
it's for both who are coming on a visit.
So therefore
Hmm.
that and why I'm saying this is that this particular amendment of this came in such person came in 20 and 21 came in at the same time.
Yes. See, what it says is initially the wording was the citizen or person of Indian origin. That was substituted by such person.
So this substitution of such person
Hmm.
came in when?
With effect by it says
No, 1/4/2021.
relaxation and
So
amendment.
if you read
Hmm.
if you read the law anterior thereto, there was difficulty. That is
Hmm.
what I wanted to point out.
Yeah.
Read the law as was there prior to the institution of substitution by such person.
Hmm.
It was,
Hmm.
if you see earlier law, it was, and in the case of a citizen Indian origin or citizen of India.
Hmm.
So the word such person came in at a later point of time.
Hmm.
So if you look at the assessment year 2021, there could be difficulty.
Hmm.
This is 21-22.
Yes.
So you mean to say, and in case of a person of Indian origin or a citizen of India,
so earlier,
irrespective of whether he's coming back or not.
Earlier the words
absolutely.
were, if you look at the earlier law, it was, and in case of the citizen or person of Indian origin having total income. The word such person came to be substituted later.
No, because
Yes,
they realized
you
that
can argue out.
comes, no,
Yeah,
actually,
because
basically-
I sorry to interrupt. because that has been substituted by taxation and other laws into bracket relaxation and amendment of certain provisions into bracket Complete Act 2020. So I think that was a relaxation given later.
So earlier point of time, it was on not the word such person was not there.
Yes, earlier, but I was under the impression that this such person occurs under clause B.
No,
I
no, but
agree, but
Deepak,
now that you are using the word such person,
Hmm.
then it clearly makes it applicable to a person of citizen or PIO coming on a visit.
Hmm.
Earlier it was and a person of Indian origin. So this
Yeah.
word such person is
Hmm.
making all the difference. I just wanted to point that out.
yes,
Correct,
yes,
correct,
yes,
correct.
very
Because,
true.
right, Anil, otherwise what would have happened is these words would have been interpreted in isolation.
Correct,
know.
correct.
No,
But
but
then
then actually it's not a question of benefit. It's a question of actually
yes.
taking away the benefit.
Taking away the benefit.
Ah,
So
Deepak
they
sir,
give,
it's a question of
they
taking away
take
the
away
benefit.
benefit by relaxing the income tax law.
So
Or
anyway,
rather, clarifying.
No,
Clarifying.
it's not a,
I'm
no,
only
but
saying
then it can't be under relaxation. See, my issue is
no,
if you look at the budget, rationalization means increase in tax.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
No, so they use kind of double speak
No,
language.
why
But
why I pointed this out is that when
Hmm.
you read the law, particularly in the context of testing residence, charge, etc., you have to be very
very
careful
yes,
at what
extremely
law you
careful.
use
Yes.
or what.
Yes, yes.
That's
Yes.
Because it keeps twisting and turning. In fact, Deepak sir,
yes,
I
yes.
just wanted to
You
clarify.
look at and probably you would have covered it.
Hmm.
What difference it has now made by the definition of not liable to tax, which has come in subsequently.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you look at what the position was at an earlier point of time, and Finance Act 20 are now defining what is not liable to tax. That also has made a difference.
Yes. Acha, Deepak sir, I just wanted to respond on one thing. Then all
Yes.
this came in between. You mentioned about what to do in the return. So
Hmm.
see, those kind of situations occur many times. I mean,
Yes.
to give you an example, where there is a person who is returning this way,
Hmm.
uh, there is no special mention available in the tax return. So what happens is I'm exposed to a possible query moment I write the number of days more than 60. You get my point?
Yes.
Because we don't know whether he's coming back on a visit or how he has come back.
Correct.
See, look at a return being processed by a computer.
Hmm.
Ideally, there should be also a provision whether this clause is applicable to me or not.
Hmm.
Assessee should be given a choice to say, but that is not there. I'll give you many examples like that.
Yeah.
And what I have always done is, so that is what you can advise people who now encounter this difficulty in future, although that may not be a perfect solution. What I do is, on the day I file the return, I write a letter to the assessing officer, that is jurisdictional officer,
Correct.
and state therein that I have stated such and such in the return because the return of income does not provide for that. However, this is what I mean, and I'm conveying this to you. So
Good
I'll give you
solution.
another example
Right.
where I am a non-resident and I elect to be taxed as a resident. Earlier, there used to be a form which was required to be filed.
Hmm.
Now there is no such thing to be filed. You follow, because nothing goes with the return. There is no tick box to tick that how I want to be taxed.
And the problem, what I thought was that if you
No,
write
so-
as a resident, then and in the appeal you want
No,
to
correct. So you write as a
ground,
non-resident.
then
No,
you
you
have
write
a problem.
correct, but you write as a non-resident and then claim exemption, because see, if you show the number of days less, it's going to process and throw away the return. In fact, if you're filling it up with a software, it will not allow you to show it as exempt.
I know, but from
You know,
appellate point of view, I felt
these
worried.
problems arise. I'll tell you, even for I have a short-term capital gain because of a depreciated asset, and I try to claim
54 EC.
54 EC. I
Yes.
can't do it in my tax return.
So
So
then
I have to show it under long term.
long term.
And then write a letter to the assessing officer saying that I've shown it under long term, but actually it is short term.
Correct. That's a good, suggestion.
No, but it's too much of a problem. Actually, those forms need to be properly revamped, but no one has thought of doing it. Anyway, okay.
Shall we go to next slide?
Yes.
Or anybody else has anything to say? Yeah?
That is why Kishore Bhai Karia used to say, Deepak Bhai, that there should be an option to the assessee to ask the tax department to take my return in the scrutiny, which is not there today. That is what it is. So that the controversial issues can be resolved. That's what.
No, but I felt Vishnuji's suggestion is better, that you just write a letter. You just write a letter. So you have clarified. I know that it will not go to CPC, and at the time of processing, it will not be on record. That's fine. But at least I have clarified my stand.
No, in fact, when I gave those letters earlier, there was the situation of physical filing. So when I used to file, I used to meet the officer. So used to say, "अरे क्या evidence create कर रहे हो?" मैं बोला, "हाँ, create कर रहा हूँ. तुमको लेना है तो scrutiny में ले लो." What to say now?
Correct. Next, this I have completed. Now we come to the residential status of HUF firm or AOP. Now, in this case, the partnership firm was based abroad. And as we have seen earlier, that even if the slightest control of the partnership firm is exercised from India, then it will be deemed to be resident in India and its income abroad will be taxed. Now, in this case, there was one managing partner of a
गाड़ी नहीं है.
So there was a managing partner who was of a foreign-based firm. When he came to India, he delegated all his functions under a power of attorney. Therefore, it was held that a firm is not a resident in India. Now here, the wording used is control and management. It signifies head and brain and means de facto control and not mere right to control. I'll try to explain what are the facts of this case. There was an HUF abroad. One of the member of that HUF came out of that HUF. He returned to India. He became partner in a partnership firm in his personal capacity, not in his capacity as a member of HUF. HUF gave him personally some loan, and that money was invested in this partnership firm. The department sought to say that the HUF, which is based outside India, is resident in India. So in response to that, Supreme Court has said that there should be actual control of that HUF from India. Here, that there is no actual control. The HUF was completely based outside India. Next decision is again of these are all very, very old decisions which we studied during our CA final days. And in fact, during my reading here, I was reading Palkhiwala's book written by Soli Sorabji. Excellent book. I recommend everyone should read. And all these decisions were argued by Mr. Palkhiwala in good old days under 1922 Act. The name of the book is Palkhiwala, the Courtroom Genius. Situated, the wording used is situated. It means it involves some idea of some sort of a permanency and the idea of some present existence. That means there should be effective control. So in this case also, there was a partnership firm in South Africa, and the person, one of the partners, returned back to India for good. The partnership deed and the status, how he controlled that firm in South Africa, they were not clear. Therefore, Supreme Court said that it was referred back to the AO and asked that you inquire on these issues, whether there is some sort of a permanency and there is the present existence. Where the Indian branch of a foreign firm is managed by a partner in India. So for example, if there is then it cannot be said that the control and management of the affairs of the firm is wholly situated outside India, and therefore the firm will be taxed in India. So if there is a foreign firm and it has a branch in India, and then if one of the partner is controlling branch as well as the firm, then you can say that the firm will become resident in India. So and the last decision is very interesting. This is again good old decision. There was Burma and in Bengal. So there were rubber plantations outside India, and those rubber plantations in Burma were managed by partners in ton by ton. So the Madras High Court held in the year in which the partner resident in India managed those plantations, income would be taxable, and in the year the partners outside India manage those plantations, the firm will not be taxable in India. So there is a big difference. So if you want to set up an entity outside India, partnership firm is not advisable, because even if you exercise slightest control from India, it will be taxed. It is advisable to set up a company. Then you go to from now onwards, we should see place of effective management rules. Next slide. Now, in case of a company, up to assessment year 2016-17, it said that even if the slightest control is exercised from outside India, it will not be taxed in India. This was a very interesting case of Radharani Holding. This company was set up in Singapore. 99% of the share capital was held by the person resident in India. The entire money went from India into the Singapore company invested entire amount in Indian markets, stock markets, and the dividend or whatever income was received by that Singapore company. This company produced tax residency certificate of Singapore, and meeting of board of directors of the company were held in Singapore. So this decision said that since the control of this company is based in Singapore, therefore it cannot be taxed, even though it is owned by 99% by Indian person and the 100% of its investment is in India. So to overcome this, I think the Income Tax Act has come out with the place of effective management rules. The second decision is of a company in Sikkim. Now, the Income Tax Act was extended to Sikkim with effect from assessment year 1990-91. This company was resident in Sikkim. The question that arose was, this company had chartered accountant based in Delhi, and all the operations were managed by this chartered accountant in Delhi. So therefore, and there was a raid on these premises, and it was noted that all its business was carried out in Indian taxable territory. So they said that even though the company is based in Sikkim, its income will be taxed in India. So this is the decision prior to 1st April 1990. If a person is resident for one source, he will be deemed to be resident for all other sources of income. So there is nothing like resident for one source or another source. Now we come to place of effective management rules. These are probably new topics to many of us. So we will try to go a little bit slow and we will try to understand. The place of effect. So if the place of effective management of a company which is based outside India or abroad is deemed to be in India, then it will be deemed to be resident in India and its income will be taxed in India. But if the place of effective management is outside India, then the income of such company will not be taxed in India. So those who plan to set up companies outside India, especially in countries like Dubai where there is no taxation, they have to take care of this place of effective management rules. And as Vishnuji has already pointed out, other GAR provisions and other provisions. But today in this part, we will see place of effective management rules. So place of effective management means where the key management and commercial decisions, underline word key management and commercial decisions that are necessary for the conduct of the business entity as a whole are in substance made. So if there are minor decisions, like say decisions to be made at plant level, those are not to be considered. You have to see key management, no, remain there only. Key management and commercial decisions, then for the conduct of the business entity as a whole. So not for the part of the entity, and in substance, that is substantially, not in minority made. These are applicable from assessment year 2017-18. Companies with a turnover of 50 crores or less, these rules are not applicable. This place of effective management rules are to be applied on year-on-year basis. As I explained earlier, the word is used is substance. So the principle of substance over form will apply. The company can have more than one place of management, but it will have only one place of effective management. Now, primarily a company, if it is active business, outside India. We will come to the definition of active business and passive business in subsequent slides. So primarily, you have to understand if the company's active business is outside India and majority of the board of directors meetings are held outside India, place of effective management will be outside India. So this principle, you keep it in mind for your subsequent slides. So those will be applicable. Then in this case, whatever the criteria or the data to be utilized is the data for the relevant year, and the earlier 2 years is to be considered. Next slide, please. Now, if the company is in active business outside India, then it will not be taxed in India, as we have said, if the business is outside India and the majority decisions of the board are taken outside India. What is the meaning of the term active business outside India? So there are 4 criteria, and they are all cumulative criteria. One criteria is passive income is 50% or less. We will see what is the meaning of passive income in subsequent slides. Similarly, total assets situated in India are less than 50% of the total asset of the company. Criteria number 3, these are all cumulative. Even if you miss out on any one of that, you will be deemed to be in business in India, active business in India. Number of employees in India or resident Indian employees is less than 50%. And final, payroll expenses of such employees as a percentage of total payroll of the company is less than 50%. So your activities in India should be less than 50%, and activities outside India should be more than 50%. That is either in terms of passive income, in terms of assets employed, in terms of number of employees outside India, and in terms of payroll expenses. So for example, if you have only the low grade employees outside India and high grade employees in India, and if the payroll exceeds 50% in India, then also you will not fall into this category. We will come to each of these terms: passive income, total assets, number of employees, and payroll expenses in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. So what do you mean by passive? What do you mean by income first? We are talking about passive income. So how do you compute income? So if there is a tax law in that country, you have to consider taxable income. If there is no tax law in that country, then you have to take it as income as per books of account. This is like our taxable income versus business the profit as per profit and loss. So if there is a tax law in that country, you have to consider taxable income. And if there is no tax law like Dubai and those countries, you have to take income as per books of account. For the purpose of calculating value of assets, if there is a tax law, then you have to take average opening and closing written down value of depreciable assets, and other assets you have to take it at cost. If there is no tax law, then you have to take the value of assets as per books of accounts, and then you have to take book value of other current assets. What do you mean by employees is employees, again, you have to take average number of employees of the opening and closing, including indirect employees performing similar tasks. What do you mean by total payroll expenses? So what will be the components of the total salary? The salary that component of payroll will include salaries, wages, bonus, and it will include retirement costs as well as social costs. Next slide. In these rules, head office, what do you mean by head office? Head office means where the senior management and their direct support staff, so like executive assistant to the managing director, so these are direct support staff, are located or primarily or predominantly located. What do you mean by senior management? Senior management means is the management which is responsible for developing and formulating key strategies and policies and ensuring their execution and implementation. So those who are responsible for formulating the policies and not implementation of the policies. Now we come to the definition of the term passive income. This is very differently defined. Passive income is the aggregate income from transactions where both purchases and sale of goods are with associated enterprises, and other indirect income like royalty, dividend, capital gain, rent, and interest except where you are a bank, then interest becomes your business income and therefore it will be treated as a active income. Now, the CBDT circular has given certain example. I will try to explain that example. Suppose there is a company B which is in India and it has a 100% subsidiary in say country X, the company called A. A company is there in country X and B company is in India. A, which is company which is based outside India, is sourcing entire goods for its parent company in India. That A has a warehouse and stock that in the country outside India, and all employees of A are in country X. So we are satisfying that criteria of all the employees abroad and the salary abroad. Now, if 30% of the income of this company A is from purchases from non-associated entities and sold to associated entities, if say 30% of the income is from purchases from AE and sale to AE, 30% of the income is from purchases from non-AE and sold to AE, non-AE, then and 10% of income is from interest. So applying this criteria, this passive income criteria, 30% of the income is both from purchases from AE and sale from AE, and 10% is from say interest. Therefore, 40% of its income is passive income, and that being less than 50%, this country's place of effective management will be considered as not in India. It will be abroad. We come to next slide. Now, if you don't fall into the above category, that you are not in active business outside India and you are deemed to be in passive business outside India, then determination of place of effective management has two stages. One stage is you have to determine who are the persons who are making these key management and commercial decisions. And two, you have to determine the place where these decisions are made. Now they have given certain guidelines. So these guidelines we will see. If the guidelines do not lead to clear identification of place of effective management under these two, then you'll have to determine where the main or substantial activity of the company is carried out, to where the accounting records of the company are kept. Next slide, please. Then here the place of decision making is important and not the place of decision implementation. Normally, place where board of directors meet is generally and takes decision is considered to be place of effective management. If the board of directors is not exercising powers themselves and they delegate the power to an executive committee, then you have to see where that executive committee is taking those key strategic decisions or policy decisions. Generally, the location of head office is an important factor. If the board of directors or the committee members do not meet physically, but they take decisions using technology like we are doing this thing now, then you have to see where the majority of those board members or the committee members are residing. Then that factor will assume important. Similarly, if there is a resolution by circulation, again also in which event the resident place of residence of those board of directors or the committee members will be relevant. Ordinarily, I mean general rule, as a general rule, place where the shareholders meeting is held is not relevant. So if a company is in say Dubai and the board meetings are held up in Dubai, and for the shareholders they conduct meeting in India, that meeting is not relevant. Shall I go to this now, not ordinarily resident?
I just wanted to say something about poem, if you permit me.
Yes. That's what.
See, actually, I mean, why I thought I'll do this is so that it will try and slightly make things simpler for everyone. See, one thing you have to remember is understand these two words. One is safe harbor rules or safe harbor concept.
Correct.
What happens is that if you look at poem itself, it is a very nebulous and a difficult to understand concept, because how can in respect of complex commercial transactions which are spread over the world, half of which are being carried out electronically, and then there is some physical meetings and decision making. In such a scenario, it is very difficult to understand or implement this place of effective management, because what we are effectively doing is that normally a company formed and registered outside India was considered as a non-resident entity. Now you are saying that if even if it is partly controlled or managed from India, it becomes a resident, and that is why all this situation has come about. So why what is this particular section? I think it is 92 or 93B. I don't have the act with me just now because I am at home. So that gives the rules or the guidelines for this determining the place of effective management. So those are called as safe harbor concept or rules. The reason why it is called safe harbor is that these rules try and explain to you in practical terms what is a in what instances. So it's like a formula, because people say that we are unable to understand this nebulous concept. So they say you go by this formula. If you fall in this, then you become, that is the place of effective management. But ultimately, what has to be understood is that it is a case of substance over form.
Correct.
So if you look at management of an entity, it is at three levels. One is the top management, which generally carries out the governance. The second is the executive management, which normally initiates or executes. Basically, it steers the company. So takes executive judgments, but it is not actually working at the shop floor level. And the third level of management is the actual shop floor level or the grassroots level of management. So what one has to understand is, if you ensure that the first two levels are always outside India, then generally you will not go wrong in these rules of place of effective management. So you should have your governance outside India. So the board should always meet outside India.
Correct.
And the top executives should be located outside India and they should be working from there.
Correct.
If that is ensured, then even if the entire board stays in India, it doesn't matter. You still would have achieved it as long as you go abroad and do those meetings. In fact,
Correct.
there are situations where you go outside the territorial waters of India and hold meeting. So what they do is, there's a ship, you just go out to the ship, hold the meeting and come back. So I mean, there are many ways, but that's not something to be
12 nautical miles beyond. 12 nautical miles beyond.
No, we don't have the time to discuss it, but there are many interesting things which have been happening in this field. So maybe some other time. But, suffice it to say that it's substance over form. So if you are able to prove in substance that you're effectively managing it overseas, then it's good enough.
I just wanted to understand, safe harbor rules are mainly used for transfer pricing or even for POM?
No. See,
they are basically for transfer pricing.
Exactly. That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
True. Let me explain. I just want to explain. Safe harbor is in fact, for software companies and startups also, they were crying for safe harbor. You must have read about it. Safe harbor is basically not about any particular section. What it means is that you please tell us in practical terms what you are trying to tax. So give us some rules like do's and don'ts. That is what is safe harbor. I think Satya sir will be able to clarify.
No, but
there what Milind is saying is actually there the percentages are given.
Exactly.
That is what he is referring to.
Yeah.
Which
no, true, but here also you are given percentages. Now, if you see that slide, it says how much percent of the employees should be here.
Yeah, but
things like
that is something. Vishnu, in case of safe harbor, the range is given, which is acceptable. Here there is no range.
No range.
50% or above 50%.
No, so there has been a clamor on these also, that these actually safe harbor are not very fair. That is what they said for the purposes of this poem.
Because safe harbor mainly is used for transfer pricing. I mean, that's what I thought.
I personally feel that safe harbor here will not be really speaking applicable.
Exactly.
That's what I.
No,
Yeah,
I'm not
that's what.
talking of. I'm not talking of the section which says safe harbor. Sorry.
No,
No,
I'm
no,
also not
Vishnu,
talking
Vishnu is
about the
talking of
section.
safe harbor as a concept. That is what he's
Yes,
saying.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
I
That's
fully
it.
appreciate.
Okay,
but
okay,
that
yeah.
is- yeah.
Yeah. Shall we go to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not ordinary resident. Yeah. Section 6.6. So the concept of not ordinarily resident is applicable only to two SSCs, that is individuals and HUF. So if you are a resident in 9 out of 10 years, or in 7 preceding previous year, you are not in India for 730 days or more, then you will be deemed to be not ordinarily resident. So foreigners visiting India for the first time, for first 2 years you will be deemed to be not ordinarily resident, and from third year onwards you will be deemed to be resident. This I am making as a general statement, but you'll have to see what is the date of arrival and purpose
Yeah,
of arrival.
I think
and
there
all
is a
that.
typo in it. It's a typo.
Out.
It should be
oh,
not resident in India in 9 out of 10 years.
Yeah.
Just somehow that there is a.
Hmm.
Actually, in fact, you have done it. What was the earlier? Earlier
Yeah.
what was there was that if you were a non-resident for 2 years in a row,
Correct.
for
That
the
is
next
correct.
8 years you
So,
could be a
yes,
NOR.
yes,
But now
yes,
they
yes.
turned it on its head.
yes,
They turned it on its head.
yes.
उल्टा करून टाकलं एकदम.
हो. So that is because this Pradeep J. Mehta case, Supreme Court decided in favor. The Gujarat High Court decision was reversed. Gujarat High Court interpreted like this, the way the provision is now. And then Supreme Court reversed Gujarat High Court, and therefore government amended the law. Minor child of 10 years or less cannot have NOR status. Then
तर ते
HUF
फक्त तेवढं चेंज करा ना सागर. नॉट
Correct,
रेसिडेंट
सागर.
इन इंडिया इन
हम्म.
नॉट शब्द टाकून द्या आधी.
हो.
हे PDF असेल ना पण.
ते करतो मी करतो. Next. खाली for HUF, the above tests are to be applied to Karta of HUF.
Is this what you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Non-resident in India in 9 out of 10 years.
Correct. Not.
O पण राहिला. That's okay. तर मी करतो परत.
हा तो
Out of.
out O राहिला.
O राहिला. Sorry, very sorry.
दीपक चुकून आउट झाला.
नाही, मी इनच आहे.
आउट मधला ओ आउट झाला.
आणि सगळ्यांना माहितीये दीपक आउट होणाऱ्यातला नाहीये.
हे झालं. आणि आज सगळ्यांनी क्रिकेटची लँग्वेज वापरायची सागरने सांगितल्याप्रमाणे. एनिवे, जोक्स अपार्ट. सॉरी. Carry on.
HUF above tests are to be applied to Karta of HUF. Next slide.
To ask you one thing, I mean, just confirmation from you. See, what can be done is if the Karta becomes a non-resident, or rather the other way, it's a non-resident HUF and Karta becomes resident otherwise, and there is somebody else who is a non-resident, then the Karta can always remit his office, and if all the other co-partners consent, then another person can be Karta in his place because he expresses his inability to operate as a Karta. So then in that case, you can change the residentship suitably.
Correct. But Karta should not be resident even. He should not be Karta for even 1 day in a year, na?
Correct. No, so म्हणजे जर तुम्हाला असं वाटलं की आता त्याची स्टेटस ऑफ रेसिडेन्स बदलणार आहे तर त्याच्या आधी तुम्ही करता बदलून टाकू शकता. एवढंच. Provided of course you have a major co-partner in existence who can take his place.
And also you establish that the person who is appointed is going to really act as a Karta because
Yes, true. बरोबर. Very true.
Correct. Now these are the two amendments made by Finance Act 20 from 1st April 2021. The same which we discussed earlier. Citizen of India or a person of Indian origin having total income other than the foreign source income exceeding rupees 50 lakhs. So in this case, the period of stay is more than 120 days, but less than 182 days. And in case of a citizen of India who is deemed to be a resident under 61A, the foreign, he will be deemed to be not ordinarily resident. And the definition of foreign source of income means which accrues or arises outside India other than the one which is income controlled from India and which is not deemed to accrue or arise in India under section 9.
Deepak sir, a
Go to-
query hai. If he
Yeah,
has
go ahead.
exempted income,
That is not to be counted.
that is
because-
not to be counted. Just
Yes.
wanted
because
a
it is total
confirmation on
income.
that.
The wording used is
Ah.
total income. So if you have a say PPF interest, then that should not be counted.
Or tax-free bonds or anything
Tax-free bond
tax-free,
interest.
that
You
all
are-
that will.
Or in the, yeah. And
So dividends can now cause a problem because
will
earlier
cause a
dividends
problem.
were exempt.
Correct. Now it will cause problem if it exceeds 15 lakhs. If the taxable income exceeds 15 lakhs.
Have they used the word taxable income here?
Total income they have used.
Total income
Total
means,
income is taxable income. No?
see, look at definition of total income. Total
Yes.
income is the one which is after
Deductions under chapter 6.
deductions under chapter 6.
Shall we go to next?
Yeah.
Now, receipt of income in India, section 5. These are again, I was reminded of my good old CA final days. So the income is taxable either on accrual basis or receipt basis, whichever is earlier. Section 5.1 starts with that it is subject to other provisions. So therefore, this Patna High Court has said that section 64 will prevail over 5.1 and income of a minor from, so earlier income of a minor from admission to the benefits of the partnership firm was to be clubbed with the income of the parent, irrespective of the fact that whether parent has any income or not. The receipt of the income, now we are on receipt of income. So receipt talks about the first receipt after its accrual and not subsequent, how the SSC deals with this. So for example, if the employee is in Dubai and his salary is received in Dubai, and subsequently if he remits that salary from Dubai to his NRE account in India, it is not to be considered. You have to see receipt first at first instant because it was credited to my account in Dubai. Income, this decision is of authority for advance ruling. This non-resident person had a proprietary concern in India and he purchased and manufactured certain goods and the payment for that was received in India. So the authority for advance ruling held that you need not go to section 9 at all. Merely because the income was received in India, because of section 5, the income is taxable in India. Now, these are again good old decisions of place of receipt. So when you sell under a VPP system, there used to be a postal value payable by post system. There, when a seller effects a sale, he retains control over those goods till those goods are delivered to the buyer. And therefore, it was held that post office acts as the agent of the seller and receives price from the buyer at the place of his delivery for transmission to the seller. So place of receipt will be at the place where the payment is handed over by the buyer to the post office agent. In case of goods dispatched by railway, again, the railway receipt is a document of title. And since the document of title is passed on at a place where the buyer is located, the receipt will be in a place where the buyer is located. Next slide. These are payment by check. So when the receipt is at a time when the check is delivered and not when it is encashed. So for example, even if you are following a cash system.
Hello, Tikekar sir. Tikekar sir. Just a point here. Sir, if a foreign resource person is giving presentation or taking session from abroad and we have to make payment from India, whether TDS is applicable.
So the question is, first of all, we'll have to see whether it falls under fees for technical services or whether it falls under business connection. So this is a separate topic by itself under section 9. Okay, I'm going to come to that in subsequent presentation.
Okay,
also, DTA will also have an impact.
DTA will have impact. So Today,
Because USGTA deals
Correct.
with these professional services by individuals on a separate footing. They are
that
not
is
taxable in India.
independent personal
No.
services
Yes, yes.
versus fees for technical services.
Yes,
So
absolutely. They are
those are
not
those are
used.
all those are the finer points we will see in section 9. Those I have not covered in today's presentation. I will cover in. I have already
But
covered
since-
it in
no,
section
no,
9.
only one point that
Yeah.
since he's attending from abroad and giving presentation from there, since we have given him link from India for attending that, whether that will amount that he is giving services in India or it is services given outside India.
So section 9.1, if you go to section 9.1.6 or 7, what it says is if these services are utilized in a business in India, then it will be taxed in India. But if these services are utilized for the purpose of earning income from outside India or for the purpose of business carried out outside India, it will not be taxed. So if you have a branch abroad and if you take help of a foreign consultant and he gives services into the branch outside India, it will not be taxed in India. Or alternatively, if you say, for example, you are raising a American depository receipt issue outside India and he renders services outside India for the purpose of raising money outside India, you have an arguable case that the money, the services were utilized outside India only. They were not used in India.
No, sir, why I asked this question? Because you said post office is acting as an agent. So whether this link what we are providing to that resource person who is abroad, whether that link which we are giving from India, that will act as an agent.
No, so we will come to the, is there in this slide. So if you are talking about section 5 versus section 9, so when you are talking about section 5, in my opinion, since his bank account is based abroad, the initial receipt is outside India. So if you are talking about receipt of income only under section 5, and we are not concerned with section 9 at the moment for this discussion, you can argue out a case that since the bank account is based outside India, it will be taxed outside India only.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Receipt is outside India. These are the good old decisions which we studied in our CA final days, that if the check is sent by the post, the receipt would be at a place where the check is posted, provided the mode of sending it by post is adopted at the express or implied request of the addressee. In this case, the post office becomes agent of the addressee. Otherwise, receipt would be at a place where the check is delivered by the post office to the addressee. Similarly, if you give only simple instruction that you should make payment by check, that itself is sufficient. That would imply that it is a request to be sent by post, and therefore when the request to remit would amount to express request to be sent it by post. So in case of foreign collaboration agreement, you should have a clause that payment will be effected by the Indian party at his non-resident's place, in which event, whatever may be the mode of payment, the place of receipt cannot be in India. Probably, Pradeep ji, this will answer your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, this is a very peculiar case. This company was set up in India. It was the system. It was collecting fees on behalf of a foreign university in India. Say, for example, if you want to take up a course in, say, Harvard, this company would collect, say, $1 lakh in India for Harvard, and it would retain its commission of, say, $10,000, and it would remit $90,000 to Harvard. So authority for adverse ruling in this case has again relied on section 5, and they have said that irrespective of where the services are rendered, you don't have to go to section 9 at all. Since the income is received by Harvard University from that Harvard University from an Indian entity has received on behalf of Harvard University, therefore it will be deemed to be received in India, and the income will be taxable in India irrespective of section 9. I think this covers my presentation today for section 5 and section 6. I sincerely thank all of you for giving me patient hearing. I hope it was of some use to you and it has done some value addition.
Okay, so I was just wondering, maybe someone can give a sort of a vote of thanks, unless somebody has got to add something to what he has said.
Somebody wants to add, somebody can add. Because I have exceeded my limit by 10 minutes. 9
That's
minutes.
okay, sir. So can I request one of you to propose a sort of a conclusion? Ganesh ji is there today. Ganesh Shanbhag, can you conclude and propose a vote of thanks if you are listening? Ganesh, are you there?
Agar sir.
Uh-huh.
Sir, there are few questions in the chat box, sir.
Okay.
If you can take it up.
I didn't see it. Sorry, I didn't see it.
Okay. Yes, there are some questions.
They are pertaining to funds. One is belated return, even though form number 67 filed online along with income tax return. This is for foreign tax credit. Form number
Yes.
67 is for foreign tax credit.
Yes.
I'll have to check form 67 whether that has to be filed along with the. I think that has to be filed along with the return.
Actually, it has to be filed before the due
Before
date of
the
filing
return,
the return.
Before filing the due date of
huh.
return. Yeah.
And also before the due date of filing the return.
Filing the
That's why
return.
that question, that form is correctly filed before due date,
Yes.
but return is belated, then what happens?
Though employee is based outside India, salary is paid by an Indian company from India to him overseas in foreign currency. Is it taxable in India? No, then
that would be exempt. Yes,
that would be exempt because the receipt is also outside India and the services are also rendered outside India. Therefore, you will not be within the meaning of Section 5 and Section 9. Both you can escape. So I don't see any problem there. Thank you.
So I think there were only
Prasad ji and Vilas ji, thank you for your compliments.
No, thank you also, sir, for your wonderful lecture. You really given it, put it in proper shape.
Deepak, thank you very much.
Vishnu ji, can you continue and close it? Like anybody wants to come forward and close it?
I have just one question regarding salary. Can I ask this?
Salary?
Sir, you can ask it, but then you will have to close it.
Yes. Of course. Yes, absolutely right.
That's a good session for all of them. सर यहाँ पे इन्फोसिस का एक एम्प्लॉई है. इन्फोसिस ने फिलीपाइंस में 5 साल का एक प्रोजेक्ट लिया है. एम्प्लॉइज की सैलरी इंडिया में आती है. इन्फोसिस जो वहाँ पे भी इन्फोसिस की ब्रांच है, वहाँ पे भी उसको अलाउंसेस के बेसिस के ऊपर वहाँ पे पेमेंट करती है फिलीपाइंस के अंदर, और वहाँ की फिलीपाइंस कंपनी उसके ऊपर टैक्स काटती भी. एंड दिस अमाउंट ऑफ फिलीपाइंस can be chargeable in India and taxable in India in salary point.
So what is his period of stay in India? What is his period of stay in India?
सर वो 5 साल के अंदर एक हर साल आता है, 30 दिन 40 दिन रहता है.
No, then only salary paid in India will become taxable. Salary in Philippines will not be taxable in India because he is a non-resident. And in my section 9, is it a subsistence allowance there?
Like, yes, sir.
So this will be covered in my section 9.
Okay.
This I have this kind of situations I have covered in my section 9 presentation.
Sir,
section 9 there is another subsection which talks about salary, accrual of salary, and but to answer your question, since he's a non-resident and since the salary is paid outside India for services rendered outside India, that will not be taxed, and salary paid in India, even though the services are rendered outside India, irrespective of section 9, because of section 5, it will be taxed in India.
तो इन्फोसिस यहाँ पे उसके सैलरी के ऊपर 192 सैलरी के ऊपर जो टीडीएस काटती है और वहाँ पे भी जो पे कर रही है, तो उसमें किस तरह से होगा? यहाँ पे उसका रेसिडेंस में नॉन रेसिडेंस में रिटर्न फाइल होगा इंडिया में?
Here it will be non-resident, but since salary is received in India, he will pay tax. Singapore, in Indonesia, I don't know the law of Indonesia. If Indonesia says that you are a resident of Indonesia and your salary in India also will be taxed, because in India he is a non-resident and in Philippines he is a resident. So if Philippines taxes is Indian salary there, then he can claim credit for taxes paid in India against Philippines tax payable in Philippines.
Okay, sir. और वहाँ पे जो फिलीपाइंस के पास
so TDS credit you get in the country of residence against the tax paid in country of source country.
Okay. और सेकंड सर यहाँ पे विष्णु सर ने एक डबल टीडीए की बात की है, तो मेरा एक क्वेश्चन यहाँ पे है कि डबल टैक्सेशन एवोइडेशन क्या टीडीएस को ओवरराइड कर सकता है, टीडीएस प्रोविजन को?
Yeah, it overrides all the provisions of the act.
No. Basically, double tax avoidance, there is no question of TDS, overriding TDS. The question is, double taxation is avoided by two means. So one method is the income is taxed in either of the country. That is called tax exemption method. And second is tax credit method. That income is taxed in both the countries, and tax paid in the source country is given credit in the tax payable in the country of residence. So TDS and all is a separate story altogether.
सर यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि शिपिंग कंपनी जो हो रही है ना, हमारे क्लाइंट्स उसके अगर शिपिंग चार्जेस के ऊपर टीडीएस काटते हैं तो वो हमको डबल टी एग्रीमेंट के हिसाब से बोलते हैं कि आपको टीडीएस नहीं काटना है। एंड देयर इज अ वन जजमेंट इन राजस्थान हाई कोर्ट, वहाँ पे कहा गया है कि डबल टी इज डिफरेंट थिंग एंड टीडीएस इज डिफरेंट थिंग्स। इसके लिए मैं थोड़ा सा कंफ्यूज था।
No.
I think you'll have to look at the double taxation treaty of that country. If that country says for that particular this thing there is no tax to be charged, then that overrides, I think, TDS provisions.
No, first of all, you'll have to determine what is the residential status of that employee in India. Then, if it is a shipping company, where is the flag of that ship located in which country? Because that ship is considered to be the resident of that country, of which it carries that flag under the international law. So there are a lot of facts we'll have to understand first before I can answer this question.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But now this calls for the closure by Parimal.
सर तो मैं यहाँ पे जरूर कहूँगा कि हमारे जो सीनियर सर है दीपक सर ने जो भी प्रेजेंटेशन, वो एक्सीलेंट प्रेजेंटेशन है, और हमारे और जैसे बहुत सारे जो सीएस है उसके लिए तो ये इतना एक्सेलेंट प्रेजेंटेशन है कि जहाँ पे नॉन रेसिडेंस के बारे में हमको इतना ज़्यादा पता चला, ओएम के बारे में पता चला, कार के बारे में पता चला, तो इट्स वेरी एक्सीलेंट सर, और वी हैव टू बी अंडर द गाइडेंस ऑफ फ्यूचर एंड अदर अहेड. So I think we clapped that Deepak sir. And anything else, sir, Sagar sir, you have to add it?
Yeah, we will have definitely part 2 and part 3 if required, and this meeting will also be uploaded on YouTube in due course of time, and the link will be shared in the group.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Deepak sir, Deepak sir, it was a great session. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone.